Today I'm inside a Model 3 and we have a child seat right here because I have received a ton of emails this week about how child seats fit in the Model 3. When we did our full review on this car, I didn't have time to include our usual child seat segment because the video was already getting so long that we had to split it into two segments. So in this video, let's talk specifically about child seats and the Model 3. One of the first things you'll notice here is that we do have fixed headrests in the back, and that does mean that the back of the child seat doesn't sit quite as up against the rear seat back as in some of the vehicles out there. But there are a lot of pros going on for the Model 3 when it comes to child seat fitment, and the biggest of those is overall combined legroom. You'll see on the side of your screen that the Model 3 has a very large amount of combined legroom for the compact luxury segment. That is front row plus second row. That's the best way of assessing overall legroom in a vehicle. Really, the only vehicle that this might compete with that is larger than this on the inside is the Infiniti Q50. That's long been a favorite of families because it does have that extra room, especially for rear-facing child seats. The other advantage the Model 3 has over the average compact luxury sedan is overall headroom. You notice if I sit back here, very upright, my hair is brushing the ceiling, but I still have about 1/4 of an inch of headroom left. Thanks to the glass ceiling design in the Model 3, we have more headroom in here than we have in most other compact luxury sedans as well. Whether you want to use the latch anchors or the seat belt to attach the child seat in the back of the Model 3, the anchors are located in a pretty convenient fashion. And if I start cinching this child seat into place using the shoulder belt, you'll notice that the seat is kept right in the center of the outboard seating position. It doesn't skew to one side as some vehicles can. One downside you should be aware of is that you should always use the top tether anchor when installing a forward-facing child seat. And because these headrests are not removable, this band will dig into that headrest quite a bit. Hopefully once you've removed the child seat from the vehicle, the foam will pop back into place, but we haven't had this long enough to really be able to tell that for sure. When it comes to our 3-across child seat test, the Model 3 does surprisingly well, and again, better than the average in this compact sedan segment. Now there isn't quite as much room between these outboard child seats on either side as I would like. Ideally, you should have about 2 inches of room between the child seat and the door panel itself, but this does have about 1 inch overall, so this is still above many of the compact sedans with which this might compete. Some of the smaller entries in this segment, you just can't fit 3 child seats across the back. When it comes to latch anchors, we have latch anchors for the outboard seating positions only, but because of the location of the shoulder belt for the center seat position, I had no problem keeping that right in the center of the vehicle. And just in case you're wondering, due to the design of the center headrest, if you put a child seat right here in the middle, which is going to be the safest location, the top tether anchor doesn't dig into any headrests back here. The next test is our rear-facing child seat test, one of the toughest tests for smaller vehicles like this because, again, there's less room inside the cabin. Here again, the Model 3 does relatively well. If I move this child seat over to the center right here and position it just about right according to the little level right there on the seat, you can see that I would have almost enough room if this was latched into place. If this was really snugly attached to the car, it would move about 1 inch further rearward. That would give us about 1 inch of clearance between the front seats and the child seat. In an ideal world, I would want to move these seats just a little bit further forward, but that wouldn't be a problem because both of these seats are very comfortably adjusted for me at 6 feet tall. The front seat position is a pretty big deal, so I'm going to go ahead and hop up front and see what I can do to adjust that seat in order to have this child seat fit right behind myself. Combined legroom and available seating positions are really the big factors when it comes to sitting immediately in front of a rear-facing child seat. Because the squarer the vehicle is, the more upright the passenger seat or the driver's seat could be to give you more room for a rear-facing child seat back here. Now, as always, we are using the level on this child seat, which gives us the right angle for seat installation. Bear in mind that the Model 3 is a sedan, so the seating position is a little bit more reclined than we find in mainstream EVs, which are generally hatchbacks or they're trying to be a little bit SUV-like, so the seating position is a bit more upright. The overall profile is a bit boxier. But because we have very generous headroom figures here in the Model 3, I really could move this seat quite far up and then in definitely more comfortably and still be in a safe position to drive. I'm going to go ahead and move the steering wheel in here a little bit. Find it there in the infotainment cluster. There we go. We'll go ahead and push that in so that's still at a safe height. And thanks to the power seat that's in this model, it's pretty easy to find a good driving position that is still relatively comfortable. This is going to give me the most room behind myself. Hopping back into the rear, it looks like I could definitely fit this rear-facing child seat back here with the front seat adjusted for me. Again, this seat is at the appropriate angle as indicated by the little level on the child seat. Keep in mind that this would move a little bit further rearward if we were to actually latch it into place. It really should have no wiggle room, and that's going to give us that 1 to 1.5 inches of space that we really want between the driver's seat and a rear-facing child seat. From this angle, you can really notice the difference between the front seat adjusted for me comfortably at 6 feet tall and the front seat adjusted for me livably at 6 feet tall. I still had enough clearance that I didn't feel claustrophobic in the front seat, and although I was a little bit close to the pedals and the steering wheel, the tilt telescopic steering column has a long range of motion, so it was relatively comfortable. And last but not least, we have the trunk test. The Model 3 does not have a lift back like we find in the Model S. This is a traditional trunk, but it's pretty square as far as the opening goes. You can see I have no problem fitting those child seats right in there like that. Some of the luxury competition, the opening to the trunk is a little bit shorter, so you'd have to kind of wiggle them in there like a game of Tetris. That slightly taller dimension really helps out when it comes to putting multiple child seats back there in the trunk, because I can shove them back there almost to the rear seat back, and then I could fit some additional luggage off to the side. I could also fit a 22 or a 24-inch roller bag completely under the load floor because there's a little hatch under there as well. Bottom line, when it comes to our child seat test, the Model 3 passes with absolute flying colors. If you want more room in the cabin than this, you'll have to move up to something larger like an Infiniti Q50, which is a half step between the compact and mid-size luxury categories. You will obviously find more room on the inside of something like a Model S, but then you would also find more room inside something like a BMW 5 Series. But in this category, the Model 3 does better than just about any other compact sedan. Let me know what you think about all that down there in the comment section below, and of course be sure to check out our related Model 3 videos on our channel as well. I'll see you next week.